Hello, I'm Congressman David Price, representing North Carolina's 4th District. Today marks the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, landmark legislation that enshrined the right to vote for every American. It didn't happen overnight. It took decades of organizing and activism and protest and even the blood of marchers on the streets and on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, before Black Americans won equal access to the ballot box. This year's anniversary comes as we recently lost one of the civil rights movement's greatest leaders and champions, Representative John Lewis, who led that march in Selma, who made it his life's work to educate and inspire, to continue the fight to protect the right to vote for all people. It's up to us to carry his legacy forward. That means passing new voting rights legislation. Why, you ask? Why now? Why new? Why do we need new voting rights legislation if Congress passed the Voting Rights Act 55 years ago? Well, the answer is important. The Supreme Court, in one of the worst decisions surely on record, in 2013, gutted the most effective tool in the Voting Rights Act, the so-called pre-clearance procedures, which required states to receive federal approval if they were making changes in their voting laws or procedures that might have a discriminatory impact. Revoking this provision unleashed a wave of repressive and regressive new laws. In North Carolina, in Texas, and other states, it just took a few weeks to have these new laws, these voter suppression laws enacted. They disproportionately affected people of color and seniors and students and other vulnerable populations. The new laws included burdensome voter ID requirements. They limited early voting. They closed polling sites in low-income communities. The result was sadly predictable. Long lines, voter roll purges, a good deal of confusion about where and how to vote. That would have never been done under the old pre-clearance procedures. Now, the courts did strike down some of the most egregious examples among these new voter suppression laws, including North Carolina's voter ID law that one judge said had targeted Black voters with what he calls surgical precision. But a lot of those laws are still on the books. And it shouldn't take years of lawsuits to ensure basic voting rights are protected in this country. Justice delayed is too often justice denied, particularly when it comes to enabling people to vote in a pending election. Last year, the House Democrats responded by passing the Voting Rights Advancement Act. That's a bill we recently renamed appropriately after John Lewis. The legislation would protect and expand voting rights by modernizing and reinstating the pre-clearance requirement, by increasing transparency by requiring states to provide reasonable public notice for any voting changes, and by making it easier for federal observers to be present in areas where violations of the Voting Rights Act may be occurring. This is not radical policy. In fact, the Voting Rights Act enjoyed widespread bipartisan support for decades until now. Unfortunately, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act has been sitting on Republican leader Mitch McConnell's desk in the Senate since we passed it well over a year ago. Honoring John's legacy means enacting the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And I promise you that's what I will continue to fight to do. You can do your part too, first of all, by exercising your right to vote in every election. And you can visit the State Board of Elections website at ncsbe.gov to learn how to safely vote this November. And it's never been more important. Thank you.